The price of family loyalty. I used to believe that family was everything, that blood was thicker than water, and loyalty meant sacrificing anything for the people who raised you. But standing here now, looking at the desperate message flashing on my phone, I know the truth. Family isn't about blood. It's about respect. And respect was something my father never had for me. Growing up, my father, Richard Lawson, was the definition of power. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a mogul. Lawson Steel had been in the family for 3 generations, growing into one of the biggest manufacturers in the region. It was his pride and joy, more than his wife, more than his children, more than me. My older brother, Evan, was the chosen one, the heir to the empire, the son my father had spent his life grooming. Me? I was the backup plan. The one expected to be self-sufficient, to stand on my own, to stay out of the way unless I was needed. I learned that lesson early. I was 10 when I first asked my father if I could be part of the company someday. I had spent hours listening to him talk about steel production, supply chains, and quarterly profits, fascinated by the empire he had built. I just wanted to be included. "What about me, Dad?" I had asked during one of our family dinners, eyes shining with hope. He had barely looked up from his plate, giving me a dismissive chuckle. "Sweetheart, you're too smart to waste your life in a factory. Besides, women don't need to run companies. They marry into them." The table laughed. My mother, my brother, even my father's closest business partners. And I laughed too, because pretending it didn't sting was easier than admitting the truth. By the time I was old enough to prove him wrong, I had no interest in Lawson Steel. Instead, I carved my own path. I went to college on a scholarship, studied finance, and built a career as a top financial consultant in the city. I had clients who trusted me, investors who sought my advice, and a reputation I had worked tirelessly to earn. And my father barely acknowledged it. But Evan had it worse. He had spent his entire life trying to live up to my father's expectations, but he wasn't built for leadership. He was reckless with money, terrible with business decisions, and drowning in debt from failed investments. Lawson Steel had been bleeding for years because of him, but my father refused to see it. Until it was too late. The call came early one morning, while I was in the middle of preparing a client's financial report. My father's name flashed across my screen, a rare occurrence. "Dad?" I answered, more out of shock than anything. His voice was tight, clipped, straight to business. "We need to talk. Lawson Steel is in trouble." I closed my eyes. I had seen it coming for years. "How bad?" "Come by the house tonight." That was it. No pleasantries, no small talk, just an order. When I arrived, my father was already seated at the massive oak dining table, a folder spread in front of him. My mother sat beside him, looking uneasy, her hands folded in her lap. And Evan, he was there too, swirling a glass of whiskey, his knee bouncing like he was waiting for a bomb to go off. My father steepled his fingers, eyes sharp as he spoke. "The company is in trouble. I need your help." I didn't say anything. I had suspected it for years. Evan had made too many bad calls, taken too many risks, and now here they were, calling on the one person they had always overlooked. He slid the papers toward me. I glanced at them, skimming the figures. Massive debt, declining revenue, mismanaged funds. It was worse than I expected. "How much do you need?" I asked finally. $2 million. I nearly laughed. "Dad, I don't have that kind of money." "You have connections," he pressed. "Investors. Ways to restructure debt. You know how to fix this." So that was it. He didn't just want help. He wanted me to put my reputation, my finances, and my career on the line to save the company that was never meant for me. I should have said no. I should have walked away. But some foolish part of me still wanted to prove myself, to show him that I wasn't just an afterthought. So I agreed. For 6 months, I threw myself into fixing Lawson Steel. I brought in financial analysts, negotiated with creditors, and convinced hesitant investors to give the company another chance. I worked late nights, sacrificed my personal life, and poured my expertise into salvaging a business that had never been mine. And slowly, it worked. The company stabilized. The debts were restructured. Evan was still a disaster, but at least the foundation was strong again. Then, 2 weeks before Christmas, I received an email from my father's lawyer. A revised will. I read the words 3 times, my stomach sinking. My father had changed his will to leave everything, the company, the estate, the assets, to Evan. Not a single mention of me. After everything I had done, after everything I had sacrificed, I confronted him that evening, storming into his study and slamming the papers onto his desk. Explain this. He barely looked up. It's how it should be. I saved your company, Dad, I seethed. I put my name on the line for you, and you're telling me that doesn't matter. He sighed, rubbing his temples like I was the one being unreasonable. You'll be fine. You always are. But Evan, he needs this. He's the future of the company. I exhaled sharply, nodding to myself. All right. I stepped back, then let him figure it out from now on. And just like that, I walked out. I cut the money flow. I cut the ties. For the first time in my life, I stopped trying to win his approval. A week later, my phone rang. My father. I answered, expecting an apology. Instead, I got, where the hell is my money? No hello. No gratitude. Just entitlement. I smiled bitterly, gripping the phone. No hello? No thanks for saving the company? He scoffed. Don't be dramatic. You have an obligation to this family. Something inside me snapped. An obligation? After a lifetime of being treated as nothing more than a spare tool? I took a deep breath. No, Dad, I don't. Then, for the first time in my life, I hung up on him. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. He was going to call back. He was going to send another message, realize what he had done, and apologize. Any second now. But the screen stayed dark. The silence stretched, filling the space around me like a heavy fog. For the first time in my life, my father needed something from me that I wasn't willing to give. And instead of apologizing, he was furious. I shouldn't have been surprised. And yet, some naive part of me had hoped. Hoped that this time would be different. I was done hoping. I was done saving them. I was finally free. When the ties break, I thought cutting my father off would bring me peace. But peace is never that simple. Not when you're dealing with a man like Richard Lawson. For the first time in my life, I had said no. I had walked away from the family company, from the legacy I was never meant to have, from a father who only saw me as a tool. I expected anger. I expected disappointment. What I hadn't expected was silence. No calls, no emails, no demands. And that was how I knew he was planning something. For the first few days after I cut ties, I was on edge, waiting for the inevitable retaliation. But nothing came. Then one morning an email arrived. From Richard Lawson. Subject, let's be reasonable. Daisy, I understand you're upset, but family is family. We don't turn our backs on each other. Let's put this behind us. Call me. I stared at the message, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. Put this behind us? He spoke as if I had thrown a tantrum over a spilled drink, not as if he had erased me from his legacy after using me to save his company. I deleted it without replying. 2 days later, another email. From Richard Lawson. Subject, this is bigger than you. You built your career in finance. You, of all people, should understand that Lawson Steel is a long-term investment. You helped save it. Why throw that away? Evan is struggling to handle things alone. Come fix this before it's too late. There it was. The truth. It wasn't about making amends. It wasn't about valuing me. It was about the fact that without me, they were failing. I took a slow breath before responding. From Daisy Lawson. Subject this is bigger than you. It's not my responsibility to clean up Evan's mess. It never was. I hit send before I could overthink it. And that was the last time my father tried the reasonable approach. A week later, he showed up at my office. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked hesitantly. Miss Lawson, your father is here. Every head in the room turned toward me. I kept my expression blank. Tell him I'm busy. She swallowed. He says it's urgent. Of course he did. Everything was urgent when it was about what he needed. I sighed and stood. Give me 5 minutes. As I stepped out, I saw him pacing by the floor-to-ceiling windows. He looked different. His usually pristine suit was slightly wrinkled, his tie loosened, his hair a bit out of place. My father was many things, but disheveled was never one of them. When he saw me, he forced a tight-lipped smile. Daisy. I crossed my arms. Is it good to see me, or do you just need something? His jaw tightened. I didn't come here to fight. I tilted my head. No? You show up unannounced after I've ignored your emails, but you don't want to fight? His patience wavered. I just want to talk. Fine, I said, leaning against the table. Talk. He hesitated, like the conversation wasn't going the way he had planned. Then, finally, he admitted, the company is still in trouble. The investors are getting nervous. Evan is overwhelmed. I raised an eyebrow. And? His frustration flickered. And we need you back. We? I echoed, feigning curiosity. He nodded. The board, the investors, everyone knows you're the only one who can stabilize things. I almost laughed. The same people who ignored me my whole life, the same board members who treated me like an afterthought, the same father who told me I didn't belong, now they needed me. I let out a breathy chuckle. No. His expression hardened. No? That's right. He clenched his jaw. Daisy, this isn't just about you. If the company collapses, hundreds of people lose their jobs, families depend on Lawson Steel. And there it was. The guilt trip. The manipulation. The same tactics he had used my entire life. I met his gaze evenly. I already saved it once. That was my contribution. I owe you nothing. His face darkened. That company was built for Evan. You knew that. Then let Evan handle it. I turned on my heel, walking away. Daisy? I glanced over my shoulder. This conversation is over, Dad. And for the first time, I meant it. Days passed, then a week. Silence. At first I thought maybe he had given up. Maybe for once, he had taken me at my word. I should have known better, because when the next move came, it wasn't from him, it was from my mother. I was leaving work late when my phone rang. I hesitated before answering. Mom? She rarely called. She was the quiet observer, the neutral party, the woman who let things happen rather than making them happen. Daisy, she said softly, can we talk? I gripped my car door handle. Go ahead. She hesitated, then sighed. It's about your father. Of course it was. He's not doing well, she continued. He's barely eating. He doesn't sleep. I'm worried about him. I swallowed back the instinctive guilt. Mom, he's not as strong as you think, she whispered. Maybe this is his wake-up call. I exhaled, rubbing my temples. My father hadn't called again because he had realized something. I was immune to him. But my mother? He knew I still saw something good in her. He knew I might bend for her, even when I wouldn't bend for him. Mom, I said firmly. I won't do this. Daisy, please. No, I cut in. This is the pattern, isn't it? He burns everything down and you clean up the ashes. You smooth things over. You beg, and he gets away with it. Silence. I pressed on. I refused to be part of it anymore. I saved that company once. I saved him once, and he repaid me by cutting me out. He made his choice. Her voice cracked. Daisy, it's not that simple. It is, I said. For once, it is. I climbed into my car, gripping the wheel. You want to save him? Then let Evan do it. That's who he chose. That's who he bet everything on. She exhaled slowly, and I knew she understood. But understanding wasn't the same as acceptance. I just don't want to lose my daughter over this, she whispered. A lump formed in my throat. You won't, I promised, but I won't lose myself either. I ended the call before she could say anything else. The next morning, I woke up to a headline. Lawson Steel faces uncertain future amidst family dispute. I blinked. What? I scrolled through the article, my stomach tightening. Anonymous sources claimed that a former family member had walked away from the company, leaving it to crumble. That her absence had put hundreds of jobs at risk. That she had turned her back on everything her father built. They didn't name me, but they didn't have to. I barely had time to process it before my phone exploded with messages. From an old friend. Is this article about you? From a former client? Hope you're okay. Let me know if you need to get ahead of this. From my assistant. Do you want me to start screening calls? And then, one last message from Evan. You should have just helped Daisy. I felt the anger simmer in my veins. This wasn't just a news leak. This was a calculated attack. And that's when I knew my father had played his last card, and he had already lost. The last stand. The morning after the article was published, I walked into my office to find my assistant, Claire, already waiting with a folder in hand. She looked up as I approached, her expression carefully neutral. It's everywhere. I nodded, unsurprised. I figured. She hesitated. Do you want me to? No, I cut in. I'll handle it. Claire studied me for a second before nodding. Understood. I sat at my desk, exhaling slowly. I had known my father would retaliate, but this was a declaration of war, and I wasn't backing down. By noon, the calls started. First, a journalist from a major business outlet, then a former colleague, then a member of the Lawson Steel board. I ignored them all. Finally, my phone buzzed with a number I recognized. Evan. I debated ignoring it. Instead, I let it ring out. A minute later, a text arrived. Evan, we need to talk. I didn't reply. By the end of the day, my assistant knocked again. I looked up. Let me guess, my father? She shook her head. Your mother, I exhaled. Send her in. A moment later, she walked in. Her face was pale, her expression drawn. Daisy, she started, voice soft. I folded my arms. What do you want, Mom? She flinched at the bluntness. Your father, she sighed. He wants to fix this. I laughed. Fix this? He just tried to destroy my reputation and now he wants to fix this? Her hands twisted together. He meant exactly what he did, I snapped. He's losing control, and this is how he fights back. She closed her eyes. He's scared, Daisy. For what? I challenged. For the company he refused to share with me? For the legacy he swore Evan would carry? Or for his own ego? Silence. My mother looked down. I don't want this to tear us apart. I exhaled. It already did. Her eyes met mine, pleading. Then let's put it back together. I stared at her for a long moment. Then finally I said, I need to ask you something. She nodded. Of course. Do you think he was right? She frowned. Right about what? That I never deserved the company, that I was never meant to be part of it. Her mouth opened, then closed. That hesitation told me everything. I nodded, my chest tightening. That's what I thought. Daisy? I think you should go, Mom. She swallowed hard but didn't argue. Instead, she stood, lingering for a second before heading for the door. Just before she left, she turned back. Please, don't let this destroy us. I looked at her, voice steady. It already has. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the article, the calls, my mother's visit. My father was unraveling, and if I knew him at all, he wasn't done yet. I was right. The next morning, I woke up to an alert from my bank. Unusual activity detected. I immediately called them. Miss Lawson, the representative greeted. We flagged multiple login attempts on your account from an unfamiliar device. We've locked everything down for now. My stomach twisted. Who was it? We can't say for certain, the rep said carefully, but the attempts originated from an IP address linked to Lawson Steel. I exhaled sharply. Of course. My father had tried to get into my accounts. This wasn't just a smear campaign anymore. He was trying to destroy me. I spent the next hour freezing my accounts, changing passwords, and setting up extra security. Then, for good measure, I texted Evan. Tell Dad if he ever tries to touch my money again, I'll press charges. It took him 30 minutes to respond. Evan, I didn't know he would do that. I scoffed. Liar. Yes, you did. And you let him. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't get one. A week later, another call from my mother. I hesitated before answering. Daisy, she gasped, her voice shaking. It's your father. He collapsed. The world stilled. I gripped the phone. What? They rushed him to the hospital. His heart, her voice broke. They don't know if he'll make it. I swallowed hard. I should have felt something. Panic, fear, sadness. Instead, all I felt was nothing. Because even now, even with this, I knew what she was really asking. Come home. Come back. Fix it. I exhaled. Keep me updated. Silence. Then softly. Are you coming? I closed my eyes. No, Mom. 3 days passed. 3 days of missed calls from my mother. 3 days of texts from unknown numbers. 3 days of silence from Evan. Then on the 4th day, another message from my mother. Mom, he's stable but weak. The doctor said it was a warning sign. He needs to change his lifestyle. Maybe this is the wake-up call he needs. I stared at the screen. A wake-up call. She still believed that. That my father, the man who had spent years manipulating, scheming, and controlling, would suddenly change just because his body had caught up with his karma. I didn't reply. Later that night, another message. Mom, he's asking for you. I let out a breath. Of course he was. Not because he was sorry, not because he had changed, but because he needed something. I typed out the only response I could give. No. A week later, the news broke. Lawson Steel was collapsing. The investors were pulling out. Employees were being let go. Evan had failed, and my father was too weak to fix it. I expected Evan to call, to beg, to try one last time to pull me back in. But the only message I got from him was a short, bitter text. Evan, you got what you wanted. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back. No, Evan, I got what I deserved. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. The morning after Evan's text, I woke up feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Not relief. Not victory. Just peace. For the first time, there were no fires to put out, no urgent calls, no threats looming over me. Lawson Steel was sinking, but it wasn't my problem. My father was recovering, but I didn't have to be part of it. Evan was drowning, but I felt no obligation to save him. For once, my life was mine alone. A week later, my mother called again. I debated ignoring it, but I didn't. Mom, I answered, my voice neutral. She hesitated. Your father is home. I said nothing. He's different. She added quickly. He hasn't said much since he got back. Still, I said nothing. I think he wants to see you, she admitted, but he won't ask. I exhaled. And you want to know if I will? Silence. Then softly. Would you? I closed my eyes. Would I? Would I sit across from the man who had erased me? Would I give him one last chance? I opened my eyes, my choice already made. No, Mom, I won't. A shaky breath. I thought you'd say that. I swallowed. Are you going to stay? She didn't answer right away. Then, just above a whisper, I don't know how to leave. I pressed my fingers to my temple. Then that's your choice to make, I told her. Just like I made mine. The day after my mother's call, I sat at my desk, staring at the city skyline outside my office window. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the buildings. The view had always been a reminder of everything I had built, everything I had fought for. But tonight, it felt like a reminder of something else. Freedom. I had spent years tangled in my father's world, bending under the weight of his expectations, suffocating under his manipulation. Now, for the first time, I had stepped out of his shadow, and I wasn't going back. By the time I got home, exhaustion settled into my bones, but sleep didn't come easily. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every conversation, every moment that had led me here. My father's betrayal, Evan's silence, my mother's quiet desperation. I knew she wanted me to come back, to be the peacemaker, to be the one who held the family together. But that wasn't my role anymore. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to break. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with an alert from my bank. Fraud warning. Unusual activity detected. I froze. It had happened again. Within minutes, I was on the phone with the fraud department. Miss Lawson, the representative said, we flagged multiple login attempts on your accounts from an unfamiliar location. I exhaled sharply. Where? She hesitated. An IP address registered to Lawson Steel. My grip on the phone tightened. My father. Again. Even now, even after everything, he was still trying to control me. But this time, I wasn't just going to shut him out. I was going to end this. That night, I sent a single text to Evan. Tell Dad if he ever tries this again, I'll press charges. It took him 20 minutes to respond. Evan, you don't have to do that. I laughed bitterly. Yes, I do. Because unlike you, I don't let him walk all over me. Evan didn't reply, because he knew I was right. A week passed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for my father's next move. I knew it was coming, but I was ready. Then, on a Friday morning, my phone rang. Claire glanced at the screen and frowned. It's your mother, I sighed. I'll take it. She handed me the phone, and I answered. Mom? Her voice trembled. Daisy, it's your father. He collapsed. The world stilled. I gripped my desk. What? They rushed him to the hospital. His heart, it's serious. I swallowed hard. I should have felt something. Fear, sadness, regret. But all I felt was nothing, because I knew what this call was really about. She wasn't just telling me, she was asking me to come back. I exhaled. Keep me updated. A long silence. Then, are you coming? I closed my eyes. No, Mom. 3 days passed. 3 days of missed calls from my mother. 3 days of texts from numbers I didn't recognize. 3 days of silence from Evan. Then on the 4th day, another message. Mom, he's stable but weak. The doctors say he needs to change his lifestyle. Maybe this is the wake-up call he needs. I stared at the screen. A wake-up call. She still believed that. That my father, the man who had spent years manipulating, scheming, and controlling, would suddenly change just because his body had caught up with his karma. I didn't reply. Later that night, another message. Mom, he's asking for you. I let out a breath. Of course he was. Not because he was sorry. Not because he had changed, but because he needed something. I typed out the only response I could give. Me? No. A week later, the news broke. Lawson Steel was collapsing. Investors were pulling out. Employees were being let go. Evan had failed, and my father was too weak to fix it. I expected Evan to call, to beg, to try one last time to pull me back in. But the only message I got from him was a short, bitter text. Evan, you got what you wanted. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back. No, Evan. I got what I deserved, and for the first time in my life, I meant it. The morning after Evan's text, I woke up feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Not relief. Not victory. Just peace. For the first time, there were no fires to put out, no urgent calls, no threats looming over me. Lawson Steel was sinking, but it wasn't my problem. My father was recovering, but I didn't have to be part of it. Evan was drowning, but I felt no obligation to save him. For once, my life was mine alone. A week later, my mother called again. I debated ignoring it, but I didn't. Mom, I answered, my voice neutral. She hesitated. Your father is home. I said nothing. He's different, she added quickly. He hasn't said much since he got back. Still, I said nothing. I think he wants to see you, she admitted, but he won't ask. I exhaled. And you want to know if I will? Silence. Then softly, would you? I closed my eyes. Would I? Would I sit across from the man who had erased me? Would I give him one last chance? I opened my eyes, my choice already made. No, Mom, I won't. A shaky breath. I thought you'd say that. I swallowed. Are you going to stay? She didn't answer right away. Then, just above a whisper, I don't know how to leave. I pressed my fingers to my temple. Then that's your choice to make, I told her, just like I made mine. A month later, I stood outside my new home, a place with no history, no painful memories, no ghosts of a childhood spent begging for love. It was small, but mine. I took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp morning air. For the first time, I wasn't looking back. I wasn't waiting for an apology that would never come. I wasn't hoping for change that would never happen. I had finally cut the cord. And nothing, not my father's power, not my family's expectations, not the weight of the past, could take that away from me. Ever again. The morning air was crisp as I stepped onto my balcony, a warm cup of coffee in my hands. It was quiet, peaceful. For the first time in years, I had no one to answer to, no crisis waiting for me, no expectations suffocating me. And yet, as I scrolled through my phone, I saw the headlines. Lawson Steel's downfall, a family empire in ruins. The article detailed everything: the company's financial struggles, the plummeting stock, the desperate attempts to regain investor confidence. It painted my father as a once great businessman brought down by poor leadership decisions. It painted Evan as the failed successor who had let it all fall apart. And me? I was the missing piece. The article speculated that had I stayed, the company might have been saved. That I had walked away at the worst possible moment. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course, I was the villain in this story. Even after everything they had done, I was still the one who should have fixed it. An hour later, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew exactly who it was. Evan. I hesitated, then answered. A long silence. Then his voice, low, tired. You happy now? I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the warmth settle in my chest. Excuse me? You got what you wanted, he said bitterly. Dad's out, the company's failing, and I'm stuck in the middle of it. I exhaled through my nose. I never wanted this, Evan. But you know what? I don't care anymore. He scoffed. Bullsh! You wanted to prove a point. You wanted to watch us fail. I shook my head. I wanted to stop being your safety net. I wanted to stop carrying a family that never carried me. Silence. Then, softer. We needed you. I clenched my jaw. You needed me to clean up your mess, but you never needed me when it mattered. So no, Evan, I'm not coming back. Another silence. Then, he's not doing well. I rolled my eyes. You think I don't know that? The whole world knows that. The company is collapsing, and he can't fix it. But that's not my problem. Evan sighed, long and tired. It should be. I laughed dryly. Why? Because I'm the only one who knows how to fix it? Because even after being erased from his will, ignored my whole life, and treated like I was disposable, I should still feel some moral obligation? A pause. Then, he asked for you. I let out a slow breath. Of course he did. Not because he missed me, not because he was sorry, but because he needed something. I let the silence stretch before saying the only thing that mattered. No, Evan? And I hung up. Days passed. I expected the calls to keep coming, but they didn't. Maybe my father had finally realized I meant what I said. Or maybe he was too busy trying to salvage what was left of his empire. Either way, it wasn't my concern anymore. But then, my mother called. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. Mom? She let out a shaky breath. Daisy, I need to see you. I frowned. What? A hesitation. It's important. I sighed. Where? Your office. In an hour. She hung up before I could say no. When I arrived, my mother was already there, sitting in the lobby with her hands clenched together. She looked exhausted. Mom, I greeted as I approached. What's going on? She stood quickly, glancing around as if someone might overhear us. Can we talk somewhere private? I nodded, leading her to my office. Once the door closed, she exhaled heavily. Your father. I folded my arms. What about him? She hesitated, then whispered, He's trying to sue you. I blinked. For what? For walking away, she admitted. For refusing to help. He's claiming you deliberately sabotaged the company. I let out a dry laugh. You've got to be kidding me. She shook her head. I wish I was. I rubbed my temples. So what? He thinks he can force me back by threatening a lawsuit? Her voice cracked. Daisy, I don't think he's thinking clearly anymore. He's desperate. I sighed, shaking my head. Desperate people do stupid things. She reached for my hand. I'm worried about you. I pulled away gently. You should be worried about him, because if he actually follows through with this, I'll destroy him. Her eyes widened. Daisy. No, I cut in. I'm done playing nice. He dragged my name through the mud, tried to access my bank accounts, and now he wants to sue me? If he starts a war, I'll make sure he loses everything. Tears welled in her eyes. He already has lost everything. I sighed, rubbing my forehead. Then he should know better than to come after the only person who could have saved him. She swallowed. Is there any part of you that still cares? I met her gaze. I care about myself, Mom. And I finally care enough to walk away. She exhaled shakily, nodding. I thought you'd say that. She stood, smoothing her skirt. I should go. I watched as she walked to the door. Mom? She turned. You don't have to stay with him. A flicker of something, regret, maybe, crossed her face. Then, softly, I don't know how to leave. And with that, she walked out. A week passed. No lawsuit, no threats, just silence. And then one morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Evan. Evan, Dad's in the hospital again. It's bad this time. I stared at the message for a long time. Then finally I typed back. Keep me updated. A pause. Then, are you coming? I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. Then with steady fingers I typed the only answer I had left. No. And for the first time, I felt free. The sun was barely up when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I ignored it at first, rolling over, but then it rang again. A sharp, insistent vibration. I reached for it with a groggy sigh, barely registering the caller ID. Evan. I hesitated, then answered. What? A pause, then his voice, raw and exhausted. Dad's gone. The words sat there, heavy and unmoving. I swallowed. Gone? He passed in the night. My fingers clenched around the phone. I'd known this moment would come. He'd been sick, stressed, barely holding on. But now that it was here, I didn't feel the grief I was supposed to. Just a strange, hollow silence. When's the funeral? I asked after a moment. Evan exhaled. Sunday, at the house. At the house, where it had all started, where it had all fallen apart. I'll be there, I said. Then I hung up. The funeral was exactly what I expected. Wealthy associates, men in sharp suits who shook hands with somber expressions, whispering to each other about the downfall of Lawson's Steel instead of the man who had built it. Distant family members who hadn't spoken to us in years, now suddenly filled with performative grief. And Evan, standing in the corner, watching everything like it was a business transaction. I stood near the doorway, arms crossed, letting it all wash over me. I wasn't here for them. I was here for closure. Evan finally spotted me and made his way over. You came. You sound surprised. He shrugged. You weren't exactly his biggest fan at the end. I let out a humorless chuckle. And you think he was mine? His expression darkened. Still, he was our father. I nodded slowly. Yeah, he was. But what did that mean? The man who had spent his whole life controlling, manipulating, demanding loyalty without ever earning it. What did it mean now that he was gone? Evan cleared his throat. The lawyer wants to meet after this. I arched a brow. For what? The will. I laughed. What, so he could leave me nothing? Again? Evan shook his head. I don't know what it says. Then let's find out. The lawyer, an older man with silver-rimmed glasses, sat at the long mahogany table in my father's office. Evan and I sat across from him. He cleared his throat. I'll get straight to it. He pulled out a thick envelope and set it on the desk. As of 3 weeks ago, your father made one final amendment to his will. And my stomach tightened. 3 weeks ago, right before he died, he left everything to the two of you, split equally. Silence. I blinked. What? Evan frowned. That's not possible. He already cut Daisy out. He gave me everything. The lawyer nodded, and then he changed it. I exhaled slowly, trying to process. So the company? I asked carefully. Still in both of your names, the lawyer confirmed. 50-50. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair. And the house? Evan stiffened. Still both of ours. I smirked. Well, this should be fun. That night, Evan and I sat in the study, the weight of our father's empire pressing down on us. So what now? I asked, sipping the whiskey I'd poured myself from the crystal decanter. Evan rubbed his jaw. We rebuild. I arched a brow. We? He hesitated. Daisy, come on. This is what Dad wanted. I set my glass down with a clink. Oh, now you care what he wanted. Because last I checked, you were perfectly fine with him erasing me. Evan flinched, but didn't deny it. I exhaled. Look, I don't want the company. I never did. But I'm not letting you run it into the ground either. His expression tightened. I can fix this. I tilted my head. Can you? Daisy. No, I cut in. You listen to me now. I leaned forward, voice low and sharp. You have two options. One, I sell my half. The board gets to decide what happens, and you'll be nothing more than a figurehead while they clean up your mess. Evan paled. Or two, I stay, but I run it. His jaw clenched. And what do? I smirked. Whatever I tell you to. Silence. Then finally he let out a long breath. Fine. I arched a brow. Fine? His lips pressed into a thin line. Fine. You win. I smiled, satisfied. Good choice. A week later, I stepped into Lawson Steel headquarters. For the first time, I wasn't a shadow behind my father. I wasn't a footnote in my brother's success. I was the one in charge. The employees stared as I walked through the glass doors, my heels clicking against the polished floor. They were nervous. Because I was an unknown. Because I was a threat. And I wanted them to be. By the end of the month, I dismantled everything my father had built on arrogance and reckless decisions. I fired the executives who had let Evan run wild. I renegotiated contracts my father had handled with greed instead of foresight. I restored what was worth saving and burned the rest to the ground. Evan hated every second of it. But he couldn't argue. Because I was right. One evening, as I packed up my office, Evan knocked on the doorframe. Got a minute? I sighed, gesturing for him to come in. What is it? He hesitated, then sat across from me. Why are you doing this? I frowned. Doing what? This. He gestured around, fixing the company, fixing what Dad broke. I studied him for a long moment. Then, softly, I said, because someone has to. He exhaled. You could have walked away. I smiled wryly. I almost did. Evan was quiet for a moment, then he said something I never expected. I'm sorry. I blinked. For what? For everything. I tilted my head. Be specific. For letting Dad treat you like you didn't matter. For not standing up for you. For letting it get this bad. I studied him carefully, searching for signs of manipulation. But there were none. Just exhaustion. Just regret. I sighed, leaning back. I don't know if I forgive you yet. He nodded. Fair. Then he stood, shoving his hands in his pockets. Good night, Daisy. Night, Evan. 6 months later, Lawson Steel was stable. Not perfect. Not thriving, but stable. And that was enough. Evan and I would never be close, but we were civil. My father's legacy had almost destroyed me. But in the end, I was the one who rebuilt it. I was the one who took back my power. And for the first time in my life, I was free.